Well, it's of no surprise that for some bizarre reason, all of a sudden, all the newspapers are like, oh, isn't Boris wonderful? Isn't Boris amazing? Remember, only a couple of weeks ago, Boris was pretty much prepared to let a lot of people die due to herd immunity. And once again, I echo the words of Mike Galsworthy, who basically says, look, after all this is over, there should be an investigation to find out why the hell our government was going to go with that. What was their scientific modelling on this? Considering we are at the point of levels of death, we are tracking higher than Italy or any other country is. So expect not only to deaths in this country to massively escalate, but infection rates to massively go up as well in the coming weeks because, well, as you've seen recently, people just, well, didn't want to self-isolate. So, however, that gives me a lot of time to do and make videos. So, not only will I be making videos on political stuff, I'll also be doing other stuff just to keep myself sane in between working at the moment. So, anyway, this comes from the New European, and of course, Boris is just a vacuous after-dinner speaker. He's not a real leader. He's a good speaker, but being a good speaker doesn't automatically make you a good leader. So this comes from, again, the New European, and it's about the French leader Emmanuel Macron and the fact that he's been doing an amazing job during this time. So from history and heritage to population and personal income, France and the United Kingdom stand out as peer nations. Bloody and then the peaceful rivalry decline, a millennium of war and invasion and 2 centuries as allies following Napoleon's defeat. The term Entente Cordiale was coined by Robert Peel's Foreign Secretary Lord Aberdeen in 1836 and defined its relationship as equals. Enduring through the 1860 Coburn-Chevalier Treaty, established free trade. The formal 1904 Entente Cordiale, Winston Churchill's 1940 offer to unify the state, French Premier Guy Martel's 1956 request for the same, and then in the EU, albeit tested by 2 de Gaulle vetoes and Brexit, friendly rivalry remains. Today, 2 strong, wild, ambitious individuals who both began as political outsiders stand at the helm of each nation and face the greatest global health crisis in a century, each from opposite side of Europe's new political divide. Macron for internationalist independence versus Johnson's nationalist populism. Both also take inspiration from political giants of their countries, Winston Churchill and Charles de Gaulle. But to date, differences rather than similarities are most evident. Broadcasting live from the Elysee, Macron appeared to channel de Gaulle, for whom some such moments were especially declaring, "We are at war, the enemy is there, invisible, elusive, and it is advancing." In contrast, Johnson appears to have some difficulty summoning the Churchillian overtones of his hero, similarly struggling in the spotlight he has coveted for so long, fluffing lines, mixing messages, and failing to master essential details. To be fair, Johnson is performing better than his populist comrade-in-arms, Donald Trump, who called the coronavirus a hoax, concocted by his political opponents. When the virus was in its infancy, Trump declared it will go away, inaccurately compared it to the flu season, and then later claimed that we have it so well under control that we have done a very good job, while multiple experts looked on. The ever thick-skinned and egocentric Trump bristled when a reporter asked, "What do you say to the millions of Americans who are scared?" His reply, "I'll say you're a terrible reporter. I think that's a nasty question. The American people are looking for hope and you're doing sensationalism." But Trump, with his passion for contradiction, the US Center for Disease and Control, America's health public agency, is an extremely low competitive bar, and Johnson's gaffes are hardly trifling. As the UK death toll rose to above 100, with the potentially lethal disease poisoned to kill millions and paralyze the world economy, Johnson was unable to stop himself from making such decidedly non-scientific statements, as we're going to see coronavirus off and we can turn the tide within the next weeks. True to form, on a Downing Street conference call with manufacturers to address the chronic shortage of ventilators in hospital, Johnson couldn't resist characterising the emergency effort as Operation Last Gasp. Of course, Johnson's flippancy and tendency to shoot from the hip may have unfavourable comparisons with the less fun but more conscientious and cautious predecessors, such as from Margaret Thatcher to Gordon Brown. Like Macron, their work ethic and professionalism set them apart from Johnson, who disappeared from Christmas to late February and demands paperwork is reduced to 2 sides of A4. Johnson also has the Trump style of difficulties with facts. Thus, the Prime Minister breezily used an official number 10 press conference to talk of a government target of 25,000 tests daily, not only to be corrected with the real figure in a less dramatic 25,000. The Prime Minister also manages to contradict medical advice to camera, boasting of shaking everyone's hand during a recent hospital visit. Perhaps the real surprise is about the skill and gravitas gap between Johnson and the likes of Macron. Is the surprise. When asked whether the UK will seek to extend the transition period for the EU, face-to-face meetings are postponed, the Prime Minister refused to answer, adding yet Brexit's upheaval to this crisis would be the height of irresponsibility. Macron came to the office with a serious programme of national renewal with controversial proposals on tax, benefits, pensions, state industry and labour law. Johnson's hard Brexit economic policy on the government estimates that it will cut the UK GDP by 8% by 5 to 8% over 15 years, and is combined with a massive spending increase independent of the corona crisis, underfunded by unpopular higher taxes. Macron's elegant yet sufficient statecraft outshines Johnson's bluster, providing our Gallic allies with a thoughtful and effective leadership that Britain lacks. That's true. Johnson is absolutely, completely fluffed. And I was only saying this a couple of weeks ago. It might actually be possible that after this, if Johnson's early response to this crisis was found to have been detrimental, and when again you look on when other countries were taking this series seriously, implementing lockdown, closing schools, Johnson dithered. Even now, we have many things that he could do to protect vulnerable people. Not only just that, but low-income workers, and defend them from, like, he could stop rents and do all these. He could do all sorts of stuff that other countries have done, and yet he doesn't do, because as wonderful as many people for bizarrely acclaiming Johnson to be, he really isn't. He's only done the protections he has only done, and his chancellor that have taken have only really gone out to protect his rich buddies. And at the end of the day, Johnson doesn't care about you or anyone. That's the truth, and that's the guy who you elected. Unfortunately,